Hey, Deepwater, we received a notification of a potential COVID exposure at Deepwater on Sunday, November 21st in Halifax at 9:30 in Upstream. Again, that's a notification for this past Sunday, November 21st at 9:30 in Upstream. The person in question, who is one of our Upstream participants, not a leader, tested positive for COVID just yesterday, and so may not even have had COVID last Sunday when they were there. But that time frame is within kind of the incubation window, and based on COVID, or based on public health's more detailed knowledge of the case, they've decided it's the better part of prudence to issue this exposure notification. So we wanted to make you aware of that as soon as we were. I want to make sure you realize too, there's no connection between this exposure and the exposure in Dartmouth 3 weeks ago. I know 2 exposures in 3 weeks seems kind of a lot, sounds maybe kind of scary, but remember, this is also 2 notifications in 20 months. And these exposures were in different congregations on different sides of the harbor. And since the exposure in Dartmouth, we've learned that was in the main gathering specifically, not in our kids' gathering. So again, different exposures, different places, different times, different groups, the whole deal. Speaking of that exposure in Dartmouth, I also want to let you know that there's been no evidence of any spread connected to that day. We haven't received any additional notifications from public health. We haven't heard of anyone who was there who has since been diagnosed. As much as we can possibly tell, someone who unknowingly had COVID came that day and left without giving it to anybody else. So as COVID notifications go, that's good. So back to the notification from this past Sunday. What do you need to do? Well, this exposure notification is for Upstream specifically, not for the entire congregation who was here at 9:30 on November 21st. And so if you were here but not in Upstream, public health is not specifically recommending you get tested or isolate or anything else, as the chance of contact between a kid in Upstream and an adult in the main gathering is very limited, basically just to entering and exiting the building kind of a thing. That said, if you feel like it would be the better part of caution for you, or maybe if you or someone you live with is at a higher chance of risk if they do get COVID, or if you'll just sleep better at night if you have a negative test, by all means, go ahead and book that test. But public health is not requiring or recommending anything specific for adults who were not in Upstream that day. If you or your child was in Upstream, then you should book a test immediately. When we checked here just a bit ago, the availability of appointments was pretty great all around the city today, all kinds of available appointments. And so I'd encourage you to jump right on that, like go book that now and get it done. If your child, maybe they're younger or whatever, and need the gargle test as opposed to the old brain tickler, you don't have to book that in advance specifically. You can just tell them when you get there. You can't get the gargle test and that kind of thing at a walk-in, like a pop-in, whatever, but as long as it's a booked test at one of those sites, and again, tons of availability today, last we checked, you can just let them know you need that when you walk in. And if your child was in Upstream that day and you weren't, and you're going anyway, might as well get tested too. Again, that's not something public health has recommended, but if you're going to be there, why not? There is an isolation requirement with this notification for anyone who was not fully vaccinated and was there for that exposure, which obviously no kids are fully vaccinated yet. So again, the bad news is for the unvaccinated people who are present, specifically the kids, although if you're an adult, this would be true too. You need to isolate for 7 days and have a negative test at the end of that 7 days on day 6 or 7 before you can leave isolation. That's not isolate or test, it's isolate for 7 days and test. And if you choose not to get tested for some reason, you have to isolate for 14 days and watch for symptoms and stuff, but for heaven's sake, just go get tested. The good news though is that 7 days is not from the exposure notification, it's from the exposure itself. And so if you and or your child goes and gets tested today, and you get those results back tomorrow, which is a very realistic turnaround time for tests these days, about 24 hours seems to be what they're averaging, and those results are negative, then you or them or both you, that isolation period would end for you Sunday night at midnight, and you can get on with your life. And so don't be too freaked out by that idea of 7 days of isolation. If you get tested today, technically it's more like 36 hours left in that. If you are a leader and were there that day and are fully vaccinated, you still need to get tested, but you are not required to isolate just to get tested. And of course, everyone who's there should monitor for symptoms for 14 days, no matter what. But I think all of us have been monitoring for symptoms for 20 months now. So that's what you need to know and do if your child or you were in Upstream in Halifax at 9:30 last week, November 21st. There's a detailed letter from Public Health that was sent to us to distribute to you. It will be attached to this message. And so if you're seeing this in an email, it's in the email. If you're watching this online, it's in the comments. You should read it. You should follow it if you or your child was in Upstream in Halifax that day. So that's what you need to do. What about what we're doing as a church? Well, we're canceling in-person Upstream for tomorrow here in Halifax. Most everyone who attends needs to self-isolate and get tested. And so it doesn't make any sense to kind of try to pull off some sort of shoestring thing with the one or two kids who were absent last week and one or two leaders who either weren't here or already have their test results or whatever else. And so we're not going to be doing Upstream in Halifax live in person this week, but Upstream online will be happening at 11 a.m. just like it does every Sunday. And so I'd encourage you, if you're affected by this exposure notification, to just go ahead and plan to tune in with your kids at 9:30. Beyond that change, and strongly encouraging, again, I cannot be clear enough, you should follow the public health guidelines if you were there. Beyond that, and strongly encouraging everyone to follow the public health directives in the letter. There are no specific steps or adjustments or cancellations or anything else that public health is recommending or that we would need to do in light of their recommendations or whatever else. So on a more general COVID-related note, this Tuesday in the Loop, me and Matthew will be delivering what I'm calling, for lack of a better term, kind of a state of the pandemic address, where we're going to be talking about some of the really pragmatic, kind of practical questions people have been asking about church and COVID and restrictions and protocols and all that kind of stuff. And even more importantly, I'm going to be sharing with you some kind of pastoral guidance and encourage around some things that are pretty heavy on my heart for our church these days. And so please, 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 when that comes out on Tuesday, find the time to listen. It's not going to be quick. It'll probably be 20 or 25 minutes, the video. But please listen to that and take it to heart. So we'll see many of you on Sunday and hopefully all of you on Tuesday in the video. If anything changes, if we receive any additional information, if there's any word of another exposure or anything like that, our principle, our practice in this is to communicate extensively and immediately. So we became aware of this notification today. The letter came in. I scribbled some thoughts together to make sure I was communicating to you well, filmed this video and sent it out. Same thing with the Dartmouth notification. You know, we got the notification and within a couple hours we had that out to everyone. We're actually only required by public health to share this information with the people who we know were in Upstream that Sunday. And we do know exactly who that was because they're all either registered or on the volunteer list. But again, we want to make sure that we are, if anything, over communicating about this stuff. We know that COVID is kind of a scary thing for a lot of people, and we want to make sure that you know what we know, and that you know that anything that comes to our attention that could impact the safety of people in our congregation, we're making sure that you're made aware of and up to speed on. So we love you. We're praying for you. We're going to get through this pandemic one way or the other. And again, we'll see either online or in person again sometime soon.